It takes two to tango, but does it take two to double? Certainly in the case of an open double, both individuals are equally responsible for the double hit. But is this always the case? Although double hit prone individuals who drive up the ratios for everyone else? Let's take a look at a double hit histogram for the 2018 Dutch Lions Cup. We see a nice distribution of double hit ratios for every fencer who attended the tournament. We see most within the calculated average range of 11 to 14%, a good handful of fencers below the double hit average, and this is all fine and good, but if we want to study double hits, let's take a look at the outliers. Let's take a look at the fencing of someone who had more than 30% double hits. So we have the double hit data of our subject, and we can see he had an adjusted double hit ratio of 35, almost 36% in 4 matches. Now let's compare this double hit ratio to the 4 opponents he fenced in the tournament. All 4 of these opponents had above average double hit ratios, but you can also see highlighted in red that the matches they all had the most double hits in were matches they had against our double hit subject. So let's take a look at what happens when we exclude these matches. Unsurprisingly, the double hit ratios of opponents 1 through 4 all improved, but notice how only 2 matches for all 4 of these opponents are above average at 16.7%. All the other matches are at or below the double hit average. Now look at the double hit ratios of our double hit subject. 33%, 43%, 29%, and 38%. If we plot this into a bar graph, we can see a rather clear decrease in double hits for all 4 opponents when we exclude these matches. So it is safe to say that opponents 1 through 4 had average or pretty close to average double hit ratios, but if they encounter a double hit prone opponent, these ratios will increase. So no, it does not always take 2 to double. Sometimes it only takes 1 fencer to perform double hit prone actions which increase the likelihood of double hits. But what do these actions look like? Now, before we take a look at some fencing video, let's get on the same page. The tone of this video is not to criticize people's fencing. We all double. My motivation for this video is that I want to learn how to get less double hits myself. Additionally, even the fencers who had higher than average double hits still fenced very well in this tournament and pulled off some very nice techniques. Because I am only highlighting exchanges that are generally considered negative, it can give a false impression of poor fencing. With that out of the way though, let's begin. Our double hit subject for this video is wearing red socks, so I will call him Red. He is a competent fencer who pulled off some nice techniques, so he is not unskilled, but he did have a fair amount of double hits that I have organized into the following categories. He often does not act defensively. He makes poor choices in targets. He makes surprising strikes. And he does not always read the change in initiative, all of which places him at an increased risk for double hits. Starting with not acting defensively, we can see his opponent moving into long and all. You can cut from this position, but 9 times out of 10 it means your opponent is planning to thrust. His opponent is presenting threat with the point and advances into measure, before, unsurprisingly, launching a thrust. Red does not move to parry and instead launches his own thrust. He doesn't address his opponent's attack and gets a double hit. Key takeaway is that his opponent is communicating intent to thrust by switching into long and alt, and is communicating intent to throw the false strike by being the one who is closing measure. These are signs to Red to prepare to parry an incoming thrust. Instead, he attacks into an attack without addressing the opponent's weapon. Again, we see the opponent presenting threat with the point and closing in before launching a thrust. Red does not move to address the threat, and instead launches a cut to the newly created opening. As soon as the opponent launches an attack, an opening is created. I think what is happening is Red has tunnel vision and is cutting the second he sees a new opening. His opponent can't parry because he is committed to the attack, and so they double out. Next up is pull target choice. We see the opponent in a low guard. This means everything above the waist is open to attack, but this also means the opponent's sword has only one place to go: up. Red targets the opponent's right arm. I think mostly this isn't a bad idea. Striking the arm may inhibit your opponent from raising the sword and counterattacking. We aren't using sharp swords though, so there is no significant injury despite the strike landing, so the opponent is still able to immediately counterattack, leading to a double hit, but arguably an afterblow. My point with this is that the approach is very effective when targeting the wrist, but not the arm. Because the wrist is so far away from the core, it is exponentially more difficult to resist pressure on the wrist than it is to resist pressure to the arm. By targeting the arm, the opponent was able to counterattack. This attack might be effective with sharps, but not so much in the modern HEMA context. Moving on, we have surprising attacks. Red and the opponent are both in Vomtag. Generally, you can expect a right Oberhau from this position. Red launches a Unterhau. Now, I don't think there is anything inherently wrong with this, and I'm happy to see some variety in fencing. The issue is that his opponent isn't expecting an Unterhau, so when Red moves, all the opponent knows is that Red has launched an attack. He might not be able to see Red's sword, and in that split second where he has to make a decision, he just throws a cut out there. It is a conditioned response. You see your opponent in Vomtag, you see him move, so you assume you throw a right Oberhau, so you do the same expecting to meet them in a bind. When it is an Unterhau, instead of binding, it's a double hit. Again, we see the same thing. This isn't bad fencing on Red's part, but it is still a double. Against some fencers, this isn't an issue and they will move to parry. Against other fencers, when you throw a more surprising attack, you get a double hit. Arguably, this double isn't Red's fault, as he had the initiative and his opponent should have parried. An easy solution to this, though, is to throw a few out-of-measure Unterhaus to remind your opponent to keep an eye out for these types of strikes, and they will be more likely to move to parry them. Last one is reading the initiative. So when someone throws the full strike, they have the initiative. It is generally a good idea to parry that strike and counterattack if and when possible, though you may have to parry several times before an opening presents itself. Complementary to this is that your opponent is not going to endlessly parry your attacks. This is a dangerous position for your opponent to be in. You might get 1, 2, or 3 if you're lucky, but eventually your opponent will try to counterattack. In this exchange, we see Red take the initiative with the full strike, and the opponent parries. Red keeps the initiative by quickly launching another strike, but his opponent is aggressively closing measure and planning to counterattack. After the opponent has parried the second attack, Red has now lost the initiative. In a world with perfect hindsight, Red would move to parry this counterattack, but instead he launches a bold attack, resulting in a double hit. This is probably one of the most common double hits I see, and the one I struggle the most with myself, as it can be very difficult to recognize at what point you have lost the initiative. In comparison, we have a match between two opponents with very low double hit ratios. We see that when one fencer takes the initiative with a thrust, the opponent parries once, then twice, before being overwhelmed. He lost the exchange, but he was addressing the incoming threat. We see a defense against a high thrust with a single time counter. Because the fencer addressed the incoming threat and took the central line, he was able to counterattack without doubling out. I hope this video was helpful in helping you identify some fencing actions which may be more prone to double hits. Double hits happen to all of us, but it is my goal to understand a little bit more as to why. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video.